الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف المرسلين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. Continuing with the things that we should seek refuge in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala from, and these things are mentioned in many of the hadith of the Prophet alayhi salatu wassalam, and learning them one after the other has great benefits, of course. Not just to know how to make the dua, but it teaches us what to be warned against. Human beings, they are deficient in everything, and one of which is they don't know what is good and what is bad for them. And that's why they need to always return to the wahy from Allah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran and in the Sunnah of the Prophet alayhi salatu wassalam, things are put in its right way and form. The reality of things are exposed, clearly stated, so that then the human beings will get to know what is evil to stay away from, what is good to do, and he will be protected from the deception of the shaitan. And that's why one of the things that we say frequently every day, A'udhu billahi minash shaitan ar-rajim, that we seek refuge in Allah from the cursed shaitan. And what is the biggest thing that the shaitan do, which what the shaitan is for, is to whisper to the people to make them among the people of the hellfire forever. If he's not able to make them disbelievers or to be upon shirk billahi tabaraka wa ta'ala, then whatever he can get, major sins, if not then minor sins, if not two good deeds, choose the one that is of a less reward. This is also from shaitan. The lack of knowledge would make a person do a good deed that is less reward than another good deed. It's still good, but he could have had something of a higher level when he had the chance to do it. And if he, with all of the steps and the ways of shaitan, if he gives up, then he would get someone else to against the person, to bother him, to have enmity towards him. So this is the trials of this life. And of course, as we know that the biggest of all evil that a person should turn to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in seeking refuge in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala from is a shirk, associating partners with Allah. And this is something that should be always in the heart of the believers. This is the worst thing ever. And this is how a person would constantly protect himself from it. And once the heart has belittles this matter, or he thinks that he's secure from it, this is one of a dangerous route that a person is taking. He should fear for himself. Because of Ibrahim alayhi salam himself, he made dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, وَجُنُوبِنِي وَبَنِيَّ أَن نَعْبُدَ الْأَصْنَامِ. Oh Allah, protect me, take me away and my offsprings from worshipping the idols. So مَنْ يَأْمَنُ الْبَلَاءَ بَعْدَ Ibrahim. As Ibrahim al-Taymiyyah, one of the tabi'in, he said, who can then be safe from this bala, from this calamity, which is a shirk billah, after Ibrahim alayhi salam? If Ibrahim alayhi salam himself, which is one of ulul azm min ar-rusul, the father of all of the prophets that came after, and the virtues of Ibrahim alayhi salam and his sacrifice that he went through, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave him this level of al-khulla, being the close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, with all of these virtue, he would make such a dua, وَجُنُوبْنِي وَبَنِيَّ أَن نَعْبُدَ الْأَصْنَامِ, worshipping idols, which is anyone with the minimum amount of reason, he would see how foolish that is. But still, how the matter is a very serious one. And that's how the Quran teaches us. So when a person fears something, and this fear of something is so much in the heart, then the person would have sincerity in his dua. And the more the person is in ittirar and dire need, the more his dua will be more sincere. And there is nothing more need in our life than to be protected from shirk billah. This is the most important thing in our life, to be protected from it and to be upon the tawheed. Then things would fall in place. And that's why there's a hadith of the Prophet ﷺ. I'm not sure if you guys had it before, this dhikr, but it's good to, al-ilm, matters of knowledge is need to be repeated. Some people say things are being repeated all the time. Yes, this is how it's supposed to be. Things has to be that way, has to be repeated. And the more we repeat, the more things will be settled in, and even meanings will be different. Not completely different, but it adds on to the meanings of things. So this is important, inshallah ta'ala. The hadith is in the book of Al-Adab Al-Mufrad by Imam Bukhari rahimahullah, and it's a sound hadith. The hadith by Ma'qal ibn Yasar radiallahu anhu. He said, انطلقت مع أبي بكر الصديق. He said, I went out with Abu Bakr as-Siddiq radiallahu anhu إلى النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم, to the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم. And so he went with Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu to the Prophet عليه الصلاة والسلام. فقال يا أبا بكر. So the Prophet عليه الصلاة والسلام, he said, يا أبا بكر, O Abu Bakr, للشرك فيكم أخفى من دبيب النمل. للشرك فيكم أخفى من دبيب النمل. The shirk among you is more hidden than the footsteps of the ants. Much hidden than the steps of the ants. The steps of the ants, nobody hears it. Nobody even sees it. So the shirk is more hidden than this. فيكم meaning in this ummah. And the ummah is, whether it's ummah to da'wah, the entire human beings, believers and disbelievers from the time of the Prophet ﷺ to the Day of Judgment, and also Ummat al-Ijabah, the Ummah that accepts the Da'wah, which is the believers. That's why it's levels. There is major shirk and minor shirk and hidden shirk. So فقال أبو بكر, so Abu Bakr رضي الله عنه, وهل الشرك إلا من جعل مع الله إلها آخر. Yeah, as the Prophet ﷺ, is the shirk is anything except when someone makes ilah, someone to be worshipped besides Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's what everybody would say, what shirk is, associating partners with Allah, worshipping other than Allah. Alhamdulillah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protected us from worshipping other than Allah. Alhamdulillah, a person has to be grateful to Allah. But does he, even from that level, does he, then that's it, he's guaranteed till the end of his life that he doesn't fall into the major shirk? There's no guarantee for nobody. So a person has to guard his tawheed. He has to guard his tawheed by warning himself against the shirk and being firm upon the tawheed of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and to keep on having the ibadah of Allah and the obedience of Allah to protect oneself. وَهَلِ الشِّرْكُ إِلَّا مَنْ جَعَلَ مَعَ اللَّهِ إِلَهًا آخَرَ. Asking the question and to learn even how to ask the questions to get the knowledge of it. So the Prophet ﷺ, he said, قال النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم والذي نفسي بيده للشرك أخفى من دبيب النمل. By the one that my soul is in his hands, swearing by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. للشرك, lamul qasam, the lamb of swearing by Allah. الشرك, associating partners with Allah. Sharika is the partnership. للشرك أخفى, hidden, much more hidden. أخفى من دبيب النمل, from the dabib of the adab على الأرض, the walking on the earth, of the ants. للشرك أخفى من دبيب النمل. Then he said عليه الصلاة والسلام ألا أدلك على شيء إذا قلته ذهب عنك قليله وكثيره. Should I أدلك, give you an evidence, give you the way for something that if you say ذهب عنك قليله وكثيره, it will go away from you, the small of it, of the shirk, and the kathir, the much of it. He said, قال, قل, say, اللهم إني أعوذ بك أن أشرك بك وأنا أعلم وأستغفرك لما لا أعلم. He said, say, اللهم إني, and this is the dua, اللهم إني أعوذ بك. As many of the dua that has the seeking refuge in Allah. اللهم إني أعوذ بك أن أشرك بك وأنا أعلم, that I would ushrik, associate partners with you, وأنا أعلم, while I know. And this is the worst evil. وأستغفرك لما لا أعلم, and I seek forgiveness from you for what I do not know. So that means it brings everything. All of the different levels and types of shirk, a person is asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to protect him from it. The first thing that we, and of course we should always memorize these hadith and these dua, and to memorize it, inshallah ta'ala, as mentioned before, the issue of al-isti'adha, which is a ibadah by itself, and that by itself is the ground level for the dua to be accepted. That a person is not turning to himself. He's not saying, though it's very easy, it's very obvious. No, he's turning to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So he's starting with the tawheed, and that's the tawheed of Allah. The tawheed is purely for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The person is making dua to no one but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to protect him from the worst thing ever, which is associating partners with Allah. And this is always the case of the dua of the Muslim. And the dua هو العبادة. The dua is the ibadah, and the shirk of the people, those who commit shirk, most of it is in the dua. When people go to other than Allah, a prophet of Allah, asking the prophet of Allah, or making prayers to a dead person, it's usually the dua. Rarely, but it's still valid to happen. You would find someone making sujood to other than Allah, right? It's there, but it's much less. Making sujood to other than Allah, making salah with rituals to other than Allah. But most of the common act of shirk is when people call upon other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So when a person starts the dua with calling upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone, Allahumma inni a'udhu bika. And as mentioned before, and to repeat it again, a'udhu bika. What's a'udhu means? From 'adha ya'udhu, 'awdhan, which is التجئ وأعتصم. I seek refuge. الاعتصام is when you hold fast to something without thinking of any other mean will help you. This is the only way that would help, nothing else. So to flee to Allah, to seek refuge in Allah. If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not accept this ista'adha, then the person is ruined for sure. No doubt about this whatsoever. That's why to remove the arrogance from the heart, to remove any attachment in the heart to other than Allah. And the more the person get to know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with his names and attributes, the more this ibadah and all of the ibadat will be sincerely to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for the sake of Allah, because a person would see how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is nothing is the like of him with his perfect names and attributes, and how the human beings are weak and deficient. So why then it's a foolish thing for a person to turn to other than Allah in any matter, whether it's worldly matters, hereafter, everything. So when we need to correct the way and perfect the way, that when we say ista'adha, when we say a'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim and all kinds of things like this is a beautiful ibadah, that a person is making ibadah to Allah, the ibadah of Allah. You worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with the perfect love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and also the ibadah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that you run away from what is fearful. So you have al-khawf wal-raja, the fear of Allah and the hope for the rewards from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And anything other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is a creation of Allah. So it's all weak and it's all deficient, and it itself needs the help from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this is basically what al-ista'adha means, and that's why it's not permissible to be done to other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. As mentioned before, the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam said to someone that said that, he says, إِنَّهُ لَا يُسْتَغَاثُ بِي. I'm not the one that you seek refuge in, you seek protection from. Not even the Prophet ﷺ, even al-istighatha. But al-isti'adha is a ibadah. It's like making sujood only to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So no one, it's permissible. It's not permissible for anyone to seek refuge in Allah refuge from other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And of course the ayat in the Quran and the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, and we have al-mu'awwidhat in the Quran, قُلْ أَعُوذُ بِرَبِّ الْفَلَقِ قُلْ أَعُوذُ بِرَبِّ النَّاسِ, and things like this. So the dua, again going back to it, which is Allahumma inni a'udhu bika an ushrika bika wa ana a'lam. So an ushrika bika wa ana a'lam. Oh Allah, I seek refuge in you that I would ushrik, this is the act from oneself, that I would commit shirk, associating partners with Allah, wa ana a'lam, while I know. So the ilm here. So this is the importance of learning what is shirk. What is the shirk of Allah? And if a person did not learn it, how would he know that he doesn't know what's shirk and what's not shirk? And that shows the importance of it. And again, it shows how sad it is that some people would belittle the subject. And they would say, we say La ilaha illallah, that's sufficient enough. When the Prophet ﷺ said what he said ﷺ. And it's not to learn it for the person to point fingers at others. This is not permissible, of course. But it's for a person to protect himself and to establish the tawheed of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because it's very easy for a person to ruin himself. And one of the very common examples that you become in a state, or we are in times where Muslims are debating with themselves, is it permissible to call upon the dead or not? This is such an evil reality. Just to debate. Do us as Muslims know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with his names and attributes? Someone will go to someone dead in his grave, a human being, even if he's the best of all of the human beings. to call upon him besides Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to make dua to that person and not to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? And where does that come from? Doesn't come from anywhere whatsoever. It's all shaitan is working and twisting words here and there, and the same arguments of those who worship the idols besides Allah. ما نعبدهم إلا ليقربونا إلى الله زلفى. We only worship them, but at least the people of Quraysh, they understood what ibadah means. When they made dua to the idols and things like this, they said, ما نعبدهم, we don't worship them except يقربونا, to get them closer to Allah. يقربون إلى الله زلفى. So they had good intentions, if it's correct to call it good intentions. They want to be close to Allah. And they thought that these righteous people, shufa'a, intercessors, that they would get them closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the debate itself, what's wrong with this? This is something that, where is the Quran from the beginning to the end is about the tawheed of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Calling upon no one but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, our ibadah. And to twist the meaning of it, it's not ibadah, it's this. No, it's the dua huwa al-ibadah. Dua huwa al-ibadah. Calling upon someone. And where is that in the actions of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, the Sahaba radiallahu anhum, the Tabi'een, Tabi'een. And then to know that even the shirk, which is the minor and other than that, is hidden more than the footsteps of the ants, that means a person has to be completely away from it. And for the sake of argument, not for the sake of, as this is a valid point to be made. If, say for example, you're a lay person, doesn't know much, and these people are saying this, these people are saying, I'm confused. A person claimed to this. What is the safest way? For both sides, right? If someone say to everyone, I'm going to make dua only to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. All of my dua is to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone. I would never call upon anyone dead. I would call upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone. Would anyone has any problem with this? Would the other group would say, oh, your ibadah is deficient? You're going to go to the hellfire for this? So this is, I'm not saying that this is as a way to see the evidence. No, it's just for the sake of argument. تنزلا يعني. But even though the evidences are so much that it's beyond even to list the evidences. It's every verse in the Quran. It's every action is always related to the fact that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the only one that we make every ibadah to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone. So again, the dua, Allahumma inni a'udhu bika an ushrika bika wa ana a'lam. So a'lam means we have to learn what is ashirk. And where do we get the knowledge from? Not from emotions and likings and, mashallah, sounds so beautiful, and Allah, when someone says something. No, it's about Quran and the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. Whether you incline towards it or you don't, it doesn't matter. It's wahy from Allah. So what did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say about ash-shirk billah in the Quran? What did the Prophet ﷺ say about ash-shirk billah? And when the ulama, when they give the categories of shirk, shirk al-akbar, or shirk al-azhar, or shirk al-khafi, this is not categorizing things in a ritual way, as if it's ibadah. This is to make it easy for us to learn these nusus. So it's all about the text in the Quran and the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, so that the person protect himself from accusing others of being mushrikeen or something like this, to separate between the act and the ruling upon the person. So if someone call upon other than Allah, this is major shirk. If someone makes dua to an idol, for example, this is the very obvious one. This is a major shirk. This is exactly what the people of Quraysh would do. If someone would make dua to anyone of the creation of Allah, this is shirk, making sujood to other than Allah, things like this. And of course, this is not going to be the session where we talk about all the forms of shirk. But to know that any ibadah that is done to other than Allah, if a person does this, this is an act. This is an act of major shirk, right? We're not saying that individual, his name is such and such, he becomes a kafir. We do not know what if there's a gun on his head to do it, or what if he lost his mind for a moment here, or things like this. We're talking about how to define what is the major shirk, and how to know the ibadah. Again, it's not something that we decide on our own. It's from the Quran and the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. Everything that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commanded us to do, this is ibadah. So the ibadah has to be done only to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The minor shirk and why they call it minor, because it doesn't take the person outside the fold of Islam, but it doesn't mean to be at ease with it. Because it's minor, that means it can lead to what's major. And there are hadith of the Prophet ﷺ with physical matters that are minor shirk, whether it's to wear an amulet. This is not something that the ulama decided. This is what the Prophet ﷺ, he said, that at-tamima shirk, tamima, the amulets that people wear. They wear something, ta'aweed, right? They put it on their arms, they put it around their waist or their wrist, and they believe in it. If they believe in it that it pushes away harm, this is major shirk. But if they believe it's a mean, it's one of the means to get help, because someone read something on it, or it's blessed, or whatever there is, this is shirk, right? We're not. Yes, it's minor. Sometimes when things are to be warned against, you don't want to say minor. People think of minor, it means it's okay. No, it's not okay. It's worse than major sins. And Allah knows best what then would be in the heart of the person. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one that brings benefit, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the only one that pushes away the harm. No amulets, no nothing of this. And the subject of the means, as we talked about before many times, and we should learn this, the means, al-asbab, is a huge subject in the life of the human beings. Everybody take means. Right? And the one that doesn't take mean, make him an insane person. He's insane. He's not someone to be even talked to. Because human beings, they understand exactly how to take means. You're hungry, you go eat. You're thirsty. If there is something harmful, you push it away. You take the physical means to push away harm from you. This is how physical means, people know it from experience, from being human beings, understanding things. That's physical means. And there's the non-physical means. This is where the problem comes in place with some of them. Meaning, it fits in the wahy from Allah. The non-physical means are only to be known from the revelation from Allah. You read Quran for means of cure. Yes, it's a mean of cure. Quran shifa. Definitely, no doubt about this. You take the physical means, sure, but the Quran means of shifa. Disbelievers, they don't know that. But this is not just that we believe, right? Of course we believe. No, but this is haqq. This is true. This is even more of a mean than the physical means. And that's the same thing when a person talks about matters of al-Iman. Sometimes people, if it's only in the context of da'wah, you see, we believe in this, that's fine. But what you believe in is the haqq, is the ultimate truth. Because there is something called haqq and there's something called batil, falsehood. For someone to think it's a matter of a relative thing, this is what we believe in, this is what others believe in, so that means everything is correct. No, not everything is correct. There's haqq and there's batil. And a person has to learn to make sure that he's upon the haqq. And this is the reality of this life. But to deal with others with goodness, with kindness, this is something else. Yes, of course, a believer is commended to be kind and to be gentle, but there is right and wrong. So to know these matters, and this is list of things. And one of the good things that the books that has these evidences is Kitab al-Tawheed, where it mentioned all of the different categories of things based on the nusus, based on the Quran and the Sunnah of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. So, Allahumma inni a'udhu bika an ushrika bika wa ana a'lam. So we have to know. And then the one that is akhfa min dabib al-naml, which is mentioned, authentic hadith of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, ash-shirk al-khafi. So you have major shirk and there is minor shirk, physical actions, but it's very clear. So you stay away from amulets, from believing in that the stars has an effect in the rain, the things that people invented, believing that this is a mean when it's not a mean, it becomes shirk. If people invent in something, and you can make an encyclopedia of this. People, for example, if someone think that if you do a certain move, that will protect you from evil, right? And there's no evidence to this whatsoever. That means it makes it a minor shirk. If a person believes in something as a mean when it's not a mean. It's not a physical mean and it's not a religious mean. So you created a mean, which is haram for a person to do so. So this is the minor shirk, something that is related to actions. What's hidden is that you don't feel it. You don't see it. It's something that, as you see the context of the hadith, no one is safe from it. No one is safe from it, but it's the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that we work on ourselves and we seek refuge in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala from what's hidden, which is how can a person feel something in his heart like the Dabib al-Naml. This is, it seems to the one that reads it as if it's impossible. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, لا يكلف الله نفسا إلا وسعها. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not put burden on anyone more than what a person can bear, or our capacity. This deen, the deen of Islam is not beyond our capacity, something that we're all able to do. So it's not something that is impossible or too difficult, as some people make it as if it's impossible to be among those who purify the heart, or ikhlas, sincerity is such a difficult thing that you cannot do it. If Allah ordered us to do it, that means it's feasible for it to be done. If it requires effort, yes, we are born and we're created and we're raised to take efforts for things. And if you don't take efforts in this life, you'll be a failure. So here, this أخفى من دبيب النمل, this is in the category of a riya, the show off that a person might have in his heart, that if he's not, there's part of it, of course, which is major. If a person is determined, or he's, he would say to himself, that's it, he's just gonna show off, right, his ibadah. So he's making the ibadah to other than Allah, from the very basics of it, from the roots of it. Of course, this is an act that is not accepted, and a person, this is a punishable act, because he's making the ibadah to other than Allah, even though he's not making sujood to other than Allah or anything like this, but he's making the ibadah to show off, for people to see him, to praise him, to be famous, things like this, from the beginning. And this is not really hidden. It's hidden from other people, but it's not hidden from oneself. The danger one is not the one that is hidden from other ones other than you. No, the dangerous one is the one that is hidden from oneself. A person has something and it's hidden from him. This is the dangerous one. So this is not the hidden one. A person has to fear Allah and establish the tawheed of Allah and worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone. The next level of it is when a person, he makes the ibadah for the sake of Allah and for the sake of other than Allah. That's also as the first category. It's not accepted. أَنَا أَغْنَى الشُّرَكَاءَ عَنِ الشِّرْكِ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, I'm the most rich of the two partners. مَنْ عَمِلَ عَمَلًا أَشْرَكَ فِي مَعِيَ غَيْرِ تَرَكْتُ وَشِرْكَ. Whoever do any action, أَشْرَكَ فِي, he makes shirk in his action with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, other than Allah, from the basics of the action itself, I would leave him in his shirk. Then it's for the partner that you claim, which is nothing whatsoever. So that's also, a person has no excuse in this. From the beginning, he's going to the salah to seek rewards from Allah and to seek rewards from the people, from the very beginning, like this. The third one, which is now we get into the hidden ones, where a person, his ibadah is for the sake of Allah, based on La ilaha illallah. He's making salah because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ordered him to make the salah, dhikr, and so on. So this is his intentions. This is the sincerity for the ibadah to be accepted. And it's not a difficult thing, because Allah ordered us to do it. If you remember why, as some of the ulama, when they mentioned what's the difficulty in al-ikhlas, in the sincerity, it's not a difficult thing, but the fact that it has to be always renewed. Right? So it has to be a decision that a person is always aware of. That's why for Salatul Fajr, ikhlas, for Salatul Dhuhr, ikhlas, for Salatul Asr, ikhlas. It's not once a month, making the niyyah of Ramadan once a month or every night. That's the niyyah. That's different than the ikhlas. Right? Al-ikhlas is something that a person would have to renew every time. It's not something to be said with the tongue. There's no such a thing as a hadith or anything that the Prophet ﷺ would say, nawaitu, or he would say, ukhlisu ibadati lillah. There's no such a thing. Even the niyyah, that, as some of the ulama in the books of fiqh, when they said to be said silently, which no evidence to it whatsoever, they did not mean by this al-ikhlas. They did not mean by that is to be sincere. It's to just to say that you're praying dhuhr or praying asr. The niyyah that separates fard from nafl, or which fard are you doing. And with all of that, it's in the heart, not to be said with the tongue, because the niyyah, the place of it is in the heart. But al-ikhlas is something else, which is the sincere intention that a person is doing the ibadah for the sake of Allah. For the sake of Allah, that means Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ordered him to do it, so he's making the ibadah to Allah and seeking rewards from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone. So two things. The ibadah is done to Allah. He's making the salah to Allah, not to an idol, wal-'adhu billah, not to anyone. And seeking rewards from Allah, not seeking rewards from people. Seeking rewards from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So a person is upon this, and that's why we have to learn the intentions, the sincerity, and so on. But then, once he starts his ibadah, then the shaitan comes and doesn't leave him alone. or you're showing off. If you hate it, and we talked about that before, if you get that feeling and it's one of the worst feelings ever, that means it's shaitan, it's not you. Because shaitan, he wants to bother the individual. Or you're making your ibadah to show off. And you feel, my ibadah is going to be ruined? And you feel bad. This is shaitan. Shaitan, he's throwing this into you. And if you push that away, there's nothing whatsoever, no decrease in the rewards, no difficulty in the matter. And when people out of ignorance, they take this and it hurts them. So then they start questioning themselves in a negative way. And my ibadah is ruined. I this, and the shaitan, he loves these scenarios, if it's correct to say. A person would then, wal'adhu billah, might make him fall into the waswas. Well, let me repeat the ibadah. Or Allahu Akbar, I'll start the salah again. Let me repeat this. And this is the enjoyment of the shaitan. Right? It's just as simple. It's waswas. You're not responsible for the waswas that get thrown into oneself. But if a person takes the waswas, wastarsala fi, then he takes it and, oh yeah, that sounds nice. So let me beautify my salah. Then this is our actions comes in place. Right? Let me beautify the salah, and I'm fasting too. You know how this is a funny example when someone said to someone, oh mashallah, his salah is beautiful while he's making salah. So he said while he's making salah, and I'm fasting too, by the way. You know, something like this. So a person, he adds on to the ibadah by beautifying the ibadah for the sake of others. And only Allah knows what's in the heart. This is where the rewards are decreases, or it can ruin the ibadah if a person keeps on going. But if he pushes it away, that's good enough. And at the same time, when a person is like this, is to increase or to make it even more beautiful. And this is where when someone start the salah for the sake of Allah, and someone walks in, so he says, I'm going to make my salah longer. Right? What should you do then? You would feel bad. So should you make it shorter or make it longer? Make it longer. So this is a physical action to be done as a result of this. So make the salah longer and make your intention sincerely for the sake of Allah. If you feel like I'm not able to, that's not from you, that's the shaitan. You make a decision, and we know ourselves, a person knows himself. You make a decision that this is for the sake of Allah, but it still feels, this is shaitan, this is whispers of shaitan. And that's why the ikhlas is a decision, not a feeling. So you decide that this is going to be, I'm doing this ibadah to Allah. And I would do this for the sake of Allah, seeking rewards from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You don't have to say anything. And a person can test himself. If that person didn't walk in, is my salah is weak and deficient? And if it say yes, then work on oneself. We have to, yes, we, as human beings, we get encouraged when there is people around. That's why in Ramadan, for example, Qiyamul Layl, you can stand all night. One of which is that you're being helped with the presence of others. When a person is alone, he's more lazy. That's not necessarily an act of shirk, but we have to be warned also. So to work on oneself when a person is alone, this is one of the ways to push that away. So because of the time, Allahumma inni a'udhu bika an ushrika bika wa an a'lam. So the part of it which is the knowledge. If a person, and we keep on repeating this, if a person did not learn and sit and learn what tawheed is, and what shirk is, and how to protect ourselves from it, that means we don't have the knowledge of it. Because it doesn't come by just saying something. So a person has to learn it, especially when a person is surrounded with all kinds of acts of shirk and associating partners with Allah. So even with that, a person knows, and he knows that this is shirk, and he thinks that he's smart enough to be away from it, you still ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for help, because it's at the beginning and at the end and at all times, it's the tawfiq from Allah. It's not because you're smarter or you're better or you know or you're more knowledgeable. Person can be the most knowledgeable person on the face of earth. But if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not protect him from the evil within his own self, he's not protected. So that means to seek refuge in Allah, to make dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allahumma inni a'udhu bika an ushrika bika wa ana a'lam. So all of that so that we memorize this. I'm making it longer so that we memorize the dua. Allahumma inni a'udhu bika an ushrika bika wa ana a'lam. That I associate partners with you, wa ana a'lam, while I know. Wa astaghfiruka lima la a'lam. And I seek forgiveness. Wa astaghfiruka lima la a'lam. To the ones that I do not know. But the one that I do not know, that doesn't give us the excuse not to learn. And this is what is meant by this part is you learned, and while in the process of learning, mashallah, also you're seeking forgiveness from Allah, but you learned the ilm of this matter. And this is something else that is beyond the ilm, which is hidden in the heart. Is the ghafla that a person would have, forgetfulness, and this is where a person like his ibadah, he try to, or that he gets the show off, or as the Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhuma, when he mentioned about the explanation of this, and the best way to understand this is from the Sahaba radiallahu anhum. Sometimes is that hidden one is what a person would say without paying attention. This is hidden. Like as the famous quote, لولا البط في الدار لسرق الدار. If it wasn't for the ducks in the house would have been stolen. Is there anything wrong with that statement? The thieves were coming to steal the house, and he had ducks inside. Now people, if they do that in the city, they'll be in big trouble. But they have alarm system, things like this. If a person says, if it wasn't for the cameras outside of the house would have been stolen. Is there anything wrong with that statement? Yes, and some people might say no. Well, why did you put cameras then? You put it for some ritual activities? No, you put it as a mean to protect yourself. Nothing wrong with that. Put cameras and put all kinds of means. These are means, and it's good, and a person can take the means to do this. But this is what is meant by akhfa min dabib al-nam, more hidden than the footsteps of the ants. Is your heart attached to these means or Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? This is where the place of it is, the heart, not the physical actions. Because a person is commanded to take the physical means. When someone says, I'm not going to take the means and I would make tawakkul and rely upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you're saying two opposite things. You cannot make tawakkul ala Allah without taking the means. Because tawakkul ala Allah based, what does it mean to make tawakkul ala Allah? You're relying upon Allah in what? A person says, I'm making tawakkul ala Allah. You're relying upon Allah in what? To make ibadah. So that means. There's a mean here. There's an action, and you're putting trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Atawakkal ala Allah in protecting myself. That means you're protecting yourself and you're relying upon Allah. There's no such a thing as a tawakkal ala Allah and there's vacuum. Right? So that's why the definition of a tawakkul, اعتماد القلب على Allah, to rely with one's heart upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala مع الأخذ بالأسباب, while taking the means. And this is the real test. And this is where the test, where you take the means and you strive and you struggle with yourself, knowing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with His names and attributes, that all of these means nothing if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala decreed otherwise. And we see that left and right. We don't need to be convinced of it. Allah show us the signs. And this is one of the benefits of seeing the signs from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that take the means perfectly. But your heart is only attached to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone. So when he said, if it wasn't for the ducks in the house would have been stolen. لولا الملاح, the captain in the ship, if he wasn't very good, the ship would have been sunk and we all dead and things like this. Praise the captain. Say, mashallah, is such a great thing. And the statement even can be said with some correction to it. But to say that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one that saved us. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one that guided his heart. He's the one, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if he will, he would have made him sleep or not paying attention to what he's doing. So it's not to deny the means. The means are something that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created, and to deny the means, this is a sign of a person being foolish. And to rely upon the means, this is something that is a sign that a person has this attachment in his heart. So to take the means, but the heart is only the place of it, is the relying upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that's where, if it's hidden like this, we're weak. A person can say that all the time, and that's why to make istighfar, to seek forgiveness from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, lima la a'lam. So again, the hadith, inshallah ta'ala, is sound, and Sheikh Ibrahim rahimahullah, he authenticated it. So, Allahumma inni a'udhu bika an ushrika bika wa ana a'lam, wa astaghfiruka lima la a'lam. Allahumma inni a'udhu bika an ushrika bika wa ana a'lam, wa astaghfiruka lima la a'lam. And there's no specific time for a person to say this dua. So you say it all the time, anytime. And if a person says it on a daily basis in a specific time because it makes it easy for him to remember, sure, no problem. But not to believe that this is the virtue time to say it, or to prescribe it for others to say it before this or after that. It's just this is a general dua when a person would say this dua. So if you want to repeat it, inshallah, one time. Allahumma inni a'udhu bika an ushrika bika wa ana a'lam wa astaghfiruka lima la a'lam wa astaghfiruka lima la a'lam. Stop here, inshallah. I know that there is a few minutes, but no, no one is to leave the 7:30. No, just طيب, anything that is not clear? If someone makes the ibadah and he's showing off, and then after that later on he realizes and he repents to Allah, what happened to that ibadah? If this ibadah from the roots of it is to show off, this ibadah is not accepted. Even if he makes tawbah, he made tawbah from the punishment of this act, because the action is a sinful act. So this is the tawbah from. But the ibadah was not done to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the most merciful one. The acceptance is by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But can a person make this as a judgment to repeat his fard salah? No. Because the shaitan will have his ways. A person would say, I was 15 years old, still, I'm praying because my parents told me to pray. Something like this. That is not to be repeated. But with the nafil salah and things like this, and since we're commanded to make istighfar and to repent to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala from all sins, this is something that is at all times, from everything, whether we know or whether we don't know. But now, Allah. Someone reads Quran in the presence of his parents to please them. In her presence. No. Right. If a person reading Quran when his mother is present in front of her to make her happy, this is a beautiful deed, mashallah. Because making the mother happy is a good thing, and there's nothing better than to recite the Quran. And the person is reciting Quran for the sake of Allah, seeking rewards from Allah, and part of the seeking rewards from Allah that you make your mother happy. It's like when you also recite Quran for the sake of cure. You make ruqya on someone. This is, the Quran is recited because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَنَزِّلُ الْقُرْآنَ وَشِفَاءٌ وَرَحْمَةٌ. So you're making ruqya with the Quran. So this is like making ruqya. Your mother is not feeling well, for example, or feeling well, it doesn't matter, but you recite in Quran, she feels good. This is like making ruqya with the Quran, which is a beautiful thing. And of course, with the proper intentions, this is something that is good. One of the things that we need to make a dars on is the waswas. Waswas is a very serious matter. Shaitan, once a person becomes religious, Shaitan has his ways on people. One of which is the issue of the waswas in the ta'ah. Is you wudu correct? Did I say this? These types till it becomes compulsion situation and becomes imbalances and things like this. And this starts with the ways of the shaitan. And the person has to also have the ability to know where the limits. That means he needs to seek some medical help and things like this. And to listen to, if he's able to listen to someone of knowledge of what he needs to do. If he's not able to, that means it goes to the next level. But this is something that is always repeated as a result of allowing the waswas of the shaitan, one of which is it for the sake of Allah? Is it showing off? It's healthy if a person would push away the whispers of shaitan and think good about Allah. That a person, yes, this is, not praising oneself. A person should not praise himself, but he has to be careful from the whispers of shaitan. And that's also different than when a person looks down upon himself because he seek help from Allah. It goes together, meaning, and I hope this can be clear in 1 minute or so. We talked about that before. The weakness in ourselves, you have to make it attached immediately to the power of Allah. So when you say, La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah, no might and no power except by Allah, that means what? That means you would say, oh Allah, I would never able to make my salah except if Allah help me. But if you stop right before you say, unless Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala help me, what happens? A person becomes miserable. Well, I'm not good. I'm sinful. I'm so bad. I'm this and that. And he stops there. This is bad for oneself. But if he says this in the context of, yes, we're all like this. وَإِلَّا تَغْفِرْ لِي وَتَرْحَمْنِي أَكُنْ مِنَ الْخَاسِرِينَ. Prophets of Allah. If you don't forgive me, O Allah, if you don't have mercy on me, I will be among the loser ones. He did not say, I'm the loser. I'm a loser. I'm a loser. They say, if you don't bestow your mercy of me. So you're turning to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with the good expectations of Allah, thinking good about Allah, while when you think bad about yourself, because you think good about Allah, because nothing is the like of Allah. You think of yourself that you can do it. No, it's Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the one that would help you. With this combination, then a person is the strongest and the one that has the best confidence, because his confidence is in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right. The very good point is that we know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala رفع عن هذه الأمة رفع عن أمتي الخطأ والنسيان واستكرهوا عليه. The hadith of the Prophet عليه الصلاة والسلام, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala relieved this ummah from mistakes and forgetfulness and what they have been forced to do. So a person is not going to be punished with these types of things. And the dua here, it says, وَأَسْتَغْفِرُكَ لِمَا لَا أَعْلَمُ, and I seek refuge in you from what I do not know. This is, there's no contradiction. And if a person does something while not knowing, out of a mistake, yes, it's not a punishable act. But to seek forgiveness from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala from what it can affect the heart when it leads to the other, to the next stage. So, and a person can be questionable, even though it's not mistake. So it's not in the level of a mistake. It's something that is hidden. And the mistake al-khata is a person, he hit something by mistake. He did not intentionally, like what, for example, you were walking out the door and you bumped into a brother and he fell on the ground, right? You didn't intentionally. This is not if you do that intentionally, it's a sinful act. But the same act is done, but it's a mistake. And forgetfully, a person forgot something, which is beyond our capacity. And if a person is forced by something. But this hadith is something that is there. And especially when a person hears something like this, then he should make istighfar, and that means a person has to be, sometimes we're not aware of what we have, but it's not a mistake. No. Allah musta'an. So, barakallahu fikum wa sallallahu sallam baraka Muhammadin wa sahbihi wa sallam. سبحانك اللهم ربنا بحمدك اشهد ان لا اله الا انت استغفرك واتوب اليك.